All right. For those that don't remember or recognize me, I'm Harry Steinmetz, your deputy mayor, and we have Mayor Tracy Buxton. And this is the next meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee. And we have lots of good topics to discuss today. And Jenny Fogola-Jones, is that pronounced?
Folia.
Folia.
Whatever you want to call me, yep.
Okay. I don't want to call you anything you don't want to be
I've been
called.
worse.
Is here to help facilitate things. And, I just welcome everybody here. I'm glad you're here. And, okay. So, with no further ado, I don't think we have any other topics or anything that we need to cover administratively.
Just
Do we?
to mention, we do have the card going around for Bettina.
Oh.
So if you,
Yeah.
if you get it.
For those that don't know, Bettina's mother passed, and she is on her way to Texas. And so there's a card if everybody wants to say a little something and sign it.
Oh, and please keep the pink pen passing around with it.
Thanks.
I'd like that.
It may have somebody else's name on it,
Yeah.
so, Anyway, so that's why we're doing that. So our first topic is the city manager. And we are moving down the path slowly but surely. We will, I think, next week probably be getting 10 to 12 semifinalists to take a look at and try to narrow that down. But we want to know from the Citizens Advisory Committee, what are those qualities that you envision in the next city manager? And we will make that available to everybody on the council. And as we're evaluating, these are kind of important things. What is it that you guys want? And so I think we'll just go around and
I'll scribe
Jenny?
up here again too. I do want to just tell you guys, I've been battling a little bit of vertigo today. So sorry if I'm like looking more robotish because I don't really want to move my head too much.
okay. But let's go ahead and start with David.
So, two-way communication with the residents of the city,
Okay. How about your top three?
that would be one. Some transparency with the budget and budgeting process. I'm gonna stop there.
Okay. In terms of qualities, transparency is much more process oriented. For the individual that you're seeing, that we're talking about, how would you sort of reframe that? I certainly think communicative would be good, but transparency in the budget is a process piece, not necessarily a quality that the individual has. So how would you reframe that into an individual quality?
Be willing to be transparent about city business.
Okay. But reaching out more and not being secretive?
Not being secretive is
Okay.
what I meant by transparent.
Okay.
It's not-
Yeah, I'm just trying to get that. Chuck?
I think I could add to that. I would say to be 100% completely honest in everything that he communicates, or she communicates, so. I would also, as a new one, I would ask that, will this person treat everyone in the city of Des Moines just like they live next door to him? Or neighbors, friends, relatives, and that can go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And as number three, I would ask that, will this person be involved intimately in the various districts and neighborhoods of our city?
So willingness to reach out to the various parts of the city?
Willingness to reach out and actually step foot in the far reaches of our city.
Colleen?
Accountable, strategic, and visionary.
Okay. I'm taking a moment to make sure Jenny can get caught up here, so.
Okay.
All
I
right.
worked on it in the parking lot, so.
Okay, I can't quite read the name placard. I'm sorry, I don't have everybody. Magdalena?
Yeah, and I just have less time, so. But I can have it, so top 3 qualities, right, that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, willing to collaborate and to engage with us and with others, so just, that attitude of getting along with people and collaborate. And then just DE&I, diversity, equity, inclusion focus, that, willingness to, have that those lenses on as they put together activities or things, think about how do we help the broader community feel included and seen and that they belong. That's just to, I just think the ability to get along is like number 1 on any job.
Mm-hmm.
Getting along with people, I don't know how to say that, but, emotionally intelligent, that's what it is.
That's a good one. I like that.
Manage their emotions, emotionally intelligent,
Mhm.
and, yeah, being a lens of collaboration. Yeah.
Okay. Doug? Okay.
I just add one to it. I don't want somebody that takes the attitude or has the attitude that they are above the rest of us and their choices, that we're just a bunch of peons and they don't want what's best and don't bother me and I'm not gonna tell you what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
Any,
Anything?
so.
Okay. Oh.
No, they were just good. Are you guys turning your mics on, just making sure? No.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I don't have anything to add.
Victoria?
Piggybacking on what Doug said, I titled that a restrained ego. A creative thinker and a person of high integrity.
Okay, hang on one second. Let's get caught up.
You said restrained ego?
Yep.
Yeah. You realize who we're describing the opposite.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. No, that's very apparent. Mary Ellen?
Another Tim George.
Aw,
He has excellent
I'm gonna tell him you said that.
Mm-hmm.
interpersonal skills. He articulates the city's vision. He sends us weekly missives about his activities. He keeps us, as members of the public, this is going out not just to CAC, informed. The other thing that I would like is somebody who has knowledge of urban planning and development, so that they can make informed decisions regarding land use, infrastructure, sustainability, transportation, kind of et cetera at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Terry?
I have mindfulness, available, and listener.
A lot of them have been said, but I would add adaptability since we've gone through so much with a lot of things that happen. But so adaptability, somebody who's engaging and wants growth, but also wants, I don't know how to phrase it, like into one word, but wants growth, but also wants to keep the small town feel. So someone who's simple, but also growth minded.
Okay. Can you put your microphone a little closer to Charlene?
Okay. Already said transparent, and I associate transparency as being honest. Able to establish rapport with people. Some people just have that. And then good with managing people, not only their colleagues and staff, but the citizens. So engaged. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead, Bernice.
Integrity was the number one thing in my list, because if a person is not honest, they're not to be trusted. And this is a person with a position that will have a lot to do with the management of this city of Des Moines. Integrity to me is more important than many other things that I've heard. Of course, a visionary, because we need someone that's going to come into this city and make it what we envision it to be, a beautiful place to live. A person who has experience as a city manager. That's important. That's important because I don't want them to come to Des Moines and cut their teeth on Des Moines and learn what it means to be a city manager. They need to come with experience. They need to come with credibility. They need to come with good references. This is what we need, someone who knows how to manage the city. I was looking up, well, what does a city manager do? And they plan. That's number one. I mean, they can be the friendliest guy on the street, but if he doesn't know a thing about planning a city, it's not going to benefit us. We need someone who knows how to organize, whether it's his staff or whoever it is. He has to have that ability to be able to organize. He has to be a leader, know how. I'm explaining what management means. So he has to have the ability to lead and control. He has to have a certain amount of control in controlling what goes on. Now, everyone will not appreciate it, but he has to have that ability. Otherwise, he's just going to be tossed here and there, depending on the loudest voice that he hears. So he has to know where he's going, what the purpose, what the point is, what's best for the city of Des Moines. That's what I'd like to see in a city manager.
All right. Wow, that's a great list.
You're missing 3 people.
Hmm?
You're missing 3 people.
Yeah, we're observing.
No, we
We're-
don't know what you guys think.
Well, we're all involved in that process already. I mean,
So,
yeah, the process was that we wrote a new job description. We did a lot of work that went into defining what those qualities are, and that was passed by the council. And then also the process that we went through with the consultant, we have gone through this process as well.
is there anything
So,
up there that you guys disagree with, agree with, or something new?
I think that a lot of those are the qualities that came out in the discussion up on the dais. You know, it is always, at least in my mind, there is a, do you want the city manager to be the visionary, or do you want the council, who's elected by the people, to set the vision and the city manager enacts it? That's the one thing that I hear, you know, from everybody, that I think there's a tension with. And so that would sort of be the one thing that kind of jumped out to me, since you're asking, which I wasn't necessarily gonna be there, but now I'll throw it to Tracy and put her on the spot.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Well, I think at the foundation of almost everything that was said, it has to do with the quality of character inside this person. If you get a decent person who can even fill out a form and pass the initial fences that are in before we get to see, they're gonna have a mind that is capable of doing whatever is necessary in Des Moines, so they can learn, let's put it that way. I just think that as a Northwest, Puget Sound Basin, green state, very, very deep blue, it's gonna be a steep learning curve if we get a qualified candidate from out of the state, and even possibly out of the county. And I also think that a person's network can be extremely valuable. If you haven't noticed, we're having quite a flux in our director staff, right? Our directors right now. And we're doing fine. I'm telling you, that everybody's stepping in and doing a great job, and we're finding some quality people to fill these spots. But if you're here long enough, your network here, if you've been involved in city government at all, county government, if you've worked across city borders with colleagues, it is really valuable to have that network with you in order to get certain things done. But here again, that can be gained with somebody who, gosh, I just think the most important thing is a person of good character. That's what you're looking for. It seems to me, whatever you guys said, it's whether it's strength, strength of leadership, strength, integrity, strength of honesty, fearlessness. I would say a lot of the things in people that cause them to compromise or make mistakes or hide or lie, it's all based in fear. And if you get a person who's humble and fearless, you could find most of those qualities. So that might be hard to find, but I think humble and fearless, and then experience and network is good.
Gene?
I don't know if it was expressed in specifically here, but I think we need somebody who respects the sovereignty of the people. This is our government, and you know, the hierarchy is supposed to be the citizens, the council, and then the city manager. And we're trying to fill the position, that third position, but that person needs to understand that, you know, it's the sovereignty issue. And you know, I think it's been a real problem in people feeling that we're here to serve the government rather than the government here to serve us. And so that's the one thing that I think is important. I think it goes to what Tracy, what she said about the person has to be humble and understand that. And I think that's probably the biggest issue, the biggest key that I'm looking for. So.
Bernice, can I just pick up on one thing that I got out of yours? Is that experience as a city manager is what you said.
Yes.
And again, I see a little tension in that the more experience somebody has, the more it will cost the city to hire them. We've set a fairly broad hiring range, with the idea that we can get somebody here to stay because there's always, you know, somewhere else for them to go within that range. And so can you expand maybe, and let me put this question to you, and this will be, you know, out there for anybody that wants to comment on it. If we were to find an assistant city manager, somebody who's maybe in their mid-40s, so they've got experience in government, but they haven't had that top job yet, would that be a deal killer for you, given what you've said about experience, or?
I think that would lend itself. Of course, they don't have the experience as being a city manager. But if he's worked that close, or she has worked that close with the city manager, then it won't be new. it kind of cuts down on the training and the learning because there's a familiarity there. So that's what I'm talking about, someone who has an idea of what this is going to look like. Sounds great on paper, but until they get in there and figure out things, and as they say, you're going to get what you pay for. So I hope we have enough to get a quality person and not just a settle for someone. I hope that's what we're looking at, trying to get a qualified, quality person.
And that's exactly what part of the discussion on setting that range was with the consultant who, you know, works for the firm that does this all over the country. So, you know, was trying to get there.
Person of character may not always be after the money either. It may be the quality of life that Des Moines gives that person, and that might be exactly what they're looking for. And they want to stay and build a life here that includes all of us. And money may not be their top thing. So you're right, you know, the more experience, the more we would expect that they would demand, but that's not necessarily getting inside the head of someone who is considering many other things, a good place to raise a family, a good place to retire to eventually. Those are all things that can go through someone's mind when they're considering whether they're going to relocate or come, you know, move even 20 miles to be here in Des Moines.
Kristen?
So I understand that what I heard was the job description's already been written. So how is this information going to be used by the council?
Because we are going through a process of elimination at this point. Well, actually, we haven't started that yet, but you know, we will be given a number of resumes to go through, and part of, you know, this information is going to be factored in to the council's recommendations, both individually and jointly, you know, to who are the people that are going to come out of the semifinalists to be finalists, and then go from there. And it's, you know, there won't be one person that just meets them all, but we'll be looking for a lot of these qualities.
Okay.
So, and let me go to Chuck.
So, getting back to your question, you have to consider the length of time that the person's been an assistant city manager. If they've been doing that for a year and a half, probably not enough time to really, for them to fully understand the job. But if they've been there for 5, 6 years, and as a judgment call, you guys that are interviewing them think that they are creative and, you know, they've got the energy and they've got the desire and the will to do what we need them to do, then that's a judgment call on your part. You guys need to, you know, you have to just feel them out and see what kind of person they are. But it's it's a tough job to find somebody like this and make a decision. Because it's not, it's hard to return the merchandise after you've bought it.
Yes.
In this case.
Colleen?
Thanks. I just wanted to comment on the visionary. I know we both said visionary, and I love vision and a leader. However, you brought up a really good point, and I think that is the case, that the council really sets the vision, and the city manager is like a managing principal. In the case of my firm, we have a board and a managing principal. The managing principal gets the job done, you know, and manages the staff and does all of that. You think about Sound Transit, who just brought in a new CEO because the previous one wasn't executing the vision of the board, and this one, he's doing what the board, you know, the vision. I think about Steve Burns as a city manager that I know who works for the city of Medina, and he often says to me, I got to stick with where the council wants to go. I can't just do this on my own. I can't go rogue, you know. So I just wanted to acknowledge, while vision, maybe our city manager will have vision, that would be a nice quality, but he or she, you know, works with the vision of the council, I think, and the residents, of course, too.
Is that true?
Is what true?
Will the city council be the one that presents the vision for the city of Des Moines, or will the city manager be the one with the vision? Does this person know what is expected? Or have you all decided who will be the visionary? Will they do what the city council wants?
My sense of the council is that the council sets the vision.
Okay.
And that's how pretty much everybody up there sees it. Now, that doesn't mean we all agree on what that vision is. You know, so, you know, we're 7 people.
But that's important. If you all are together on that and it's presented to him that he's the one that enacts your vision, then we're off to a good start. But if there's a confusion as to who's the visionary, then we're off to a bad start.
I agree.
So if you all already know and this person would be made aware that we just want you to do what our vision is promoting, then that's a good thing.
Thank you. Tracy?
So, and very good observations, and I think that we can cut through some of that with our candidates with some strategic questions, and I think we'll be amongst ourselves picking out some good strategic questions to try and pull that out of our candidates. With things like, tell us about a time when your organization wanted to go a different way than you really wanted to go, and how did you handle that? You know, and if they say, well, that's never happened, well, I think that if they've got enough experience, they're either lying or they don't have enough experience. So, you know what I mean? So I think if we think carefully about some of these things, we might be able to pull that out of these candidates.
Magdalena?
Has that been the experience of the city of Des Moines? Like, has
Can you get the microphone in front of you? Okay.
Has that been the experience of the city of Des Moines? Like, has the council been setting the tone for the city manager? Like, what has happened in the past?
How far back do you want to go? I think there's always been a tension, at least as long as I've been actively involved in it. You know, there has been some tension between the city manager trying to accomplish what's been directed by the council versus, you know, the city manager saying to the council, we can do this. It's not that it's a tension. It's not clearly one way or the other. You know, before Michael Matthias, you know, there were a lot of strong voices on the council, and Mr. Piasecki, who was the city manager for a long time here, was responsive to a lot of those voices. You know, and once Mr. Matthias took over, part of what was directed to him as the vision was to get the city back on their financial feet, which entailed some pretty hard decisions, and you know, to develop, and after that, to develop, you know, sort of a long-term plan, if you will, to bring Des Moines into the 21st century. And you know, we're starting to see some of the fruit of that now at the marina. So there's always been a certain tension there, you know, and it's not an easy relationship to negotiate. But if you're going to be a city manager, you need to know how to do that, and you can't just rely on if you have 4 votes on the council out of 7. That's not the be-all, end-all, at least in my mind. You know, you need to be able to incorporate everybody on the council and figure out where your direction is. And so, Gene, you want to chime in on that? Good.
I'm processing.
Okay.
I mean, I'm trying to be forward-looking on this, and that, you know, we all have an awareness of what's gone on in the past, and I think it's the proper thing here is to, you know, outline, you know, in a positive way what it is that we're looking for. And I think, again, you know, when it comes to vision, it all comes down to the sovereignty issue. who's going to control this? And you can have a city manager with vision who's from their experience. I mean, these are people that have, you know, gotten a degree, they've studied, they've hopefully been on the job already somewhere else and stuff, that they can provide an advisory, a leadership position for the council, help the council, you know, formulate and articulate what the vision is. And so I think in that sense, the city manager being visionary is you know, bringing to the table all of their skills and all of their experiences. But ultimately, the decision is, you know, of the council, and the council better be listening to the public. So.
All right. So, well, we are at the next transition. So now we have the tough one, budget priorities. And what we asked everybody to do is to take a look at the general fund, particularly sort of from the pie chart perspective, and try to articulate how you think those percentages should be. And, you know, there's lots of, you know, you can get into like granular level stuff in budgets, and we're trying to stay above that because, you know, this is part of the citizens articulating where you want the city, you know, to spend the money that it's going to spend. And so, with that, do you have a
So question on
plan?
this, for this discussion, I was just gonna capture everything in notes on the computer, or would you rather me capture it on the sheets so everyone can see? What's the preference for you?
You can probably take notes faster, and
Okay.
it's harder for us to see over there.
Okay, okay,
Colleen, is that?
okay.
Are we
Okay.
gonna be able to see? the-
Yeah, I'll send this all back out to you guys after. Yeah.
And we'll just, Bernice, is it okay to go in reverse order? We started on that side. Can we start with you, or are you not quite?
Not quite there.
Okay. I'm sorry, Colleen, go ahead.
A visual, I think you sent something out.
It looks like this,
Mm-hmm.
right? This was the one.
Yeah.
Anybody else bring it with, so we could hunker down?
Chuck's an overachiever here.
Chuck, it's on page 243.
But you can, it should have been part of the packet that you got for tonight's meeting. It's page 243 of that packet. You know, which tells you again, budget's got a lot going on. That's why we're trying to bring it up. Victoria, you have your tent up, so.
I also printed out a couple of things on revenue so that perhaps we could talk about revenue ideas. One question I had was, do you all know what's happened to the enterprise fund for raising more money via fees for rentals, that sort of thing? Because there's a
That came out of the
miscellaneous
budget.
category of revenue that hopefully will increase, which means we'll have more money to spend.
Well, the whole idea of the enterprise fund, it was for facilities, did not make it into this year's budget. So it was,
So it's dead, it's dead in the water. I thought you were.
as a separate fund, those facilities are still part of the general fund, or would be, you know, anything that came in from those facilities would be part of the general fund at this point.
So one would hope that the revenues will go up once you've researched what's market rate now, and so there's a chance that we will have more money to work with, and then this group can say, well, once that money comes in, we'd kind of like to have it spent more on that, right?
Well, if that's what you want to articulate to people is to, use this to raise money and spend it here. That's a great answer to the question that's in front of you. So, but. Okay. Do we have it? Do we know the Wi-Fi password? Huh. I don't know either.
I don't know if I have a guest or if I have the main one.
I just log into my computer,
Yeah.
but I don't have my computer.
I'm not on the guest one, so that wouldn't,
Mm-mm.
I can't share the other one.
I don't think we anticipated this. So I'm afraid.
It's not that hard if somebody wants to just go draw the pie chart and project it on.
True, I could do that. I am no artiste, though, I'm just gonna tell you that.
I have faith that yours
I
will
don't
be
know if
far
my
more
circle-
legible than
I'm
mine.
not sure my circle will be a circle,
Mhm.
let's just say no, we'll see. Here, I'll do that if you guys wanna go ahead and start your conversation.
So,
Mm-hmm,
yep. Well, that's the pie chart to
yeah.
start looking at. So-
Oh, I sent the recap that night after our meeting, so it would have been on April 24th meeting.
Can you
You want to?
print that?
Thanks,
slide?
Colleen.
Thank you.
I just
Question,
have-
question, what are the non-negotiables?
Or if
Yeah.
you grabbed it and emailed it, do you guys all get your email?
Yeah,
on
let me
your
see if I
phones?
can
she could
do,
just
I think I
email it
already
to
grabbed a
everybody's phone.
screenshot of it that I had attached.
Okay.
No,
Well, can we print out
Yeah, just send
that page?
There's a
I
printer right
sent you
there.
just the one page, just the print, yeah. That's, I just asked, not from her computer there
Mhm.
now. Let me,
Okay,
yeah.
take 5. We'll stop.
No, well, we're taking 5 then. Did everybody get to sign the card? And if you, did you get to sign it, Charlene? Okay.
Want to hand me the card?
And Kirsten, did you get to sign it too? Okay, good. There you go. So, Charlene, did you hear Bettina's mom passed away suddenly? Okay, and that's what that's about.
Are you trying to send that by email?
No, I sent it to Sarah, she's gonna print them for us. Yeah, so you can have a hard copy.
One question I have is that, are there some things on the pie chart that are non-negotiable? For example, police, that is a done deal, so we can't move that.
No, they're very much negotiable.
Oh,
Everything
Everything is
is negotiable, but like what they say is a budget is a statement of values. And so if you decide to take from the police and put it somewhere else, you're making a statement about what you believe is, yeah. So we could, we
Not
could do
necessarily,
anything.
not necessarily negative on the police.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's just whatever, yeah, it's absolutely, we have the freedom to reduce or increase, but we just need to make sure that if we give it somewhere, we have to take it from somewhere else.
Colleen?
Yes, I have a question, and for those of you who can't see it, but, the police is really large, and then there's, everything else is kind of
Mm-hmm.
the other half. Where does the new communications or community engagement fall? Within, what category? Would that be plan, building, and public works, or?
City manager.
Yeah, city manager.
Would it fall under city manager?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good. One of the bigger-
There's about 13 staff members in that pie
Under
piece.
that.
Mhm.
Okay, that's good to know.
They're the non-represented, administrative, the directors, Well, unless, no, it's not all directors, because the chief would be under police, but yeah, it's just
Mhm.
city manager's office.
Is the city attorney in that?
I think city attorney is in legal, isn't it? Let's see.
It should be separate.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah,
Is
legal,
is
yeah,
separate?
legal,
Yeah.
3.4%,
Mhm.
right there.
And what else does the muni court encompass in that piece of the pie?
The administration of the court, I believe the public defender contract, and probation services.
Domestic violence.
Oh, no,
No,
would be,
prosecuting attorney would be in the
but
city
the,
attorney piece.
but the court clerk,
Right, administrating,
and then the judge.
administrative staff and the judge. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Doug?
Land, building, and administration, is that for is that the permitting department?
It would, yeah, that's part of it.
Mhm.
In this building?
It's in this building?
It-
No, but like structures, city structures, would that fall under that too?
No,
No.
I
That,
don't think so.
I
I mean,
know I-
building,
building and parks
building
maintenance.
and parks maintenance. So when you're talking about the maintenance, that's,
It's the maintenance staff.
What are the public safety
I mean,
companies?
there is maintenance of the buildings that could conceivably fall in that. Yeah, but the value of the building itself, wouldn't. That would be an asset
Yes,
that would be listed.
I missed the maintenance.
Yeah, okay, the maintenance of the building, yeah, that's where it would be.
Yeah, but totally self.
Hang on, Doug, I think Doug's got a follow-up.
Yeah, I want to finish.
Yeah.
On the permitting department, I know that, and I've brought this up in the past, that there's many, many people that have, from a construction standpoint, say that they don't want to build in Des Moines because the permitting is just horrendous. Is that because it's underfunded, or because it's mismanaged, or are we okay with it?
How long ago have you heard that?
Many of us have heard it.
I've heard it, yeah, I've heard it,
Yesterday.
but not in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yesterday.
It came up
Okay.
in our church discussion with people who were in now whether that's something that's very recent problem, but it's still perception, if not.
And the reason I ask that is we have 2 people who worked in that department who had been there for a very long time, have retired in the last couple of years. And so it's a new department, and I know that has been a topic of conversation.
they are
I don't know
also
that it's all
looking at
solved. but-
and some technology upgrades, that's a big discussion right now. How can we put technology to work there?
Chuck,
So that,
look, just take the paper and pass it. Mhm. Yeah, Victoria?
Assuming that our levy lift passes, will any of these pie chart things be changing? Will the court be larger? Will the police be larger? Meaning there's even less money to work with?
Not necessarily, because we created a separate fund for the money that comes out of the levy lid lift, and therefore it will be an increase, not necessarily changing how it looks out of the general fund. But,
yeah, I'm not sure when they report out in the budget, they will report it out separate, and we did create a fund, but I think the fund will probably still be part of this general fund, but I'm not sure. Like, there might be a separate little pie that says police levy funds or something. I don't know, though,
Okay.
for sure. I'm not sure how they're gonna work it.
yeah, but the concept is that this is an increase that you're voting for, not something that just goes into the whole pie to be redistributed,
Yeah, that's for sure.
you know.
We made
It will.
lots of checks and balances on that.
Mm-hmm. Kirsten?
Totally self-serving. So
Oh,
where
that's fine.
does the marina fall in all this?
The marina is an enterprise fund, and it does not come out of the general fund,
Okay.
and it is run as its own business, similar to what was being asked about the facilities. And so it's got to maintain its own financial integrity, if you will.
So it also, the revenue for the marina goes into the marina enterprise fund. So you are not gonna see that on a general fund revenue pie also. So the marina, the parking lot, the docks, everything down there, those tenants pay for that. So it's a lot of times somebody says, people say, my tax dollars, I shouldn't have to pay to go into the marina parking lot and my tax dollars, that kind of thing. But really, the whole marina has been built and maintained by marina tenants. Now, since there is a few little interesting divisions that have happened over the last handful of years, but by and large, since the marina has existed, the taxpayers have not supported the marina at all. It hasn't come from taxpayer dollars.
Does the marina support the rest of the city, even in part?
No, it stays there.
It just, everything
It's its own fund.
Has it always been like that, or is that
No.
something? When did that?
There have, go ahead.
It's been tapped. In fact,
I
it's
know.
actually been, yes, it's very much been tapped. That's, you know, there's a question as to, when you have an enterprise fund, the money doesn't necessarily have to stay in the enterprise fund. It's can be used to generate money for the city, and we've done that in the past. And so, you know, that raises questions as to then, okay, how do you treat the enterprise funds?
Technically, I think if you followed our interesting conversation about the formation of our Events and Facilities Enterprise Fund, there was talk about borrowing, taking a loan from Public Works.
Surface water management.
Yeah, surface water, sorry. So I think generally that's how it should work. If you've got an enterprise fund inside of your city that's supposed to operate independently and it's got a big reserve balance and you're gonna borrow it, that internally it's an internal loan. But I wasn't here when this all happened. I mean, I lived in Des Moines, but yeah, I don't know the details about the past. I do know that what we're trying to do now is keep everything very clear and transparent, so.
And for example, like the bonds that were recently approved, the vast majority of that is going to be paid for by the marina tenants because it's going into the marina, and the marinas will be obligated for that. David, you've had your tent up for a while. I haven't meant to ignore you.
That's quite all right.
Huh?
I'm looking for a little education here. So, on two questions. One is, in my life experience, both in private industry and academia, there's been occasions where there had to be a 10% cut to the budget. And budget heads had to then figure out how to make that happen. And sometimes it was letting staff go, sometimes it was adjusting salaries, those sorts of things. Is that something the city can do? I mean, if you were facing a 10% budget deficit, do you go to whoever's in charge of the different colors here and say, how are you going to do a 10% budget cut?
Yeah, and we have. I mean, several years ago, we did furloughs, for staff in order to cut, and that meant they weren't getting paid for that day they got furloughed. So that was effectively a cut in salary to do that. And then there were lots of other cuts. First time I got involved in city politics was because they were going to cut out of Parks and Rec. And I have two boys who were actively involved in that. And, I talked about what it means and couldn't you find somewhere else? So,
and
yeah.
When that's happened into the past, did city services decline because of it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And so I take it to me, that's why you're approaching us by looking at a pie chart and say, what are the services that we think could be cut? Or should be the high priorities to maintain and the low priorities to maintain, I guess.
It is, yeah, it is. We're looking to everybody on the Citizens Advisory Board to say, okay, I get we've got the pie chart here. I think the pie chart should look like this, and move from there. And if there is a need to just take pieces out of the pie chart, that's a perfectly legitimate approach as well.
Except
So-
for the city council.
Which is a tiny little,
Yeah.
itty bitty.
A windfall, a big windfall.
So here's the deal, in my life experience in private equity, in private industry and academia, every time, how are you gonna cut it 10% and maintain the level of service you've been providing? And it always seems to work out. And so I'm trying to figure out for myself why it is they can do that at the University of Washington in individual labs or departments, why they can do that in private industry, why they can do that in venture capital, that the services are maintained with the 10% budget cut, and why the city of Des Moines can't. And is that, is that fair game for our feedback to you?
Sure.
Okay, so the other question I wanted to ask is specifically about salaries for city employees, and the degree to which that's fair game. And I'll tell you why I'm asking. I was sitting here in the back row for a city council meeting not that long ago where Events and Facilities Enterprise Fund was being discussed. And a slide was quickly put up and then moved, and then a city council member asked for it to come back. And it was about salaries. And an explanation was given about the salaries of one full-time person or two or three part-time people. And I did a back of the envelope calculation, and it looked like the person that was in charge of organizing parties for these facilities was making something like $300,000 a year, which made me regret my career choices because I was a quarter of that when I was a full faculty at the University of Washington, and why it is that someone who's organizing parties for the city is making that much more money. And it got me sort of asking questions and looking at salaries and wondering to what degree, has there really been salary inflation under the last city manager that's really not justified. And maybe that's the place that the city ought to start thinking of doing their adjustments. Because in my experience, if you cut, you can do a 10% cut and you can expect the same services. And, if the person who's hired by the city to organize parties in the facilities is making 3 times of faculty of the University of Washington, then something's out of whack. And so I'm happy to look at the pie chart and say, maybe transfers at 1.1%, I don't understand that. How important is it that you've got that much money going to transfers? But what I really think is I'd like to be giving feedback to the city that maybe there's been some salary inflation, and that's really where the city needs to start. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Victoria?
That's exactly where I was going. Next to police, the highest amount is in the city manager's office. And I think it is behooving upon the council as the leaders to say to the next city manager, scope these guys down. I think you're afraid that they will leave and go somewhere else, and you don't want them to leave. But if they have job security and great benefits, and having worked for a city, we do have great benefits. It's, these are the tough decisions that a good city manager and a strong council may be forced to make, especially given what we're going to be facing in a couple of years. Some of these other things like, well, okay, IT, it's a high number there, but we need the website overhaul desperately. I would not cut IT, but I totally agree with David that salaries have been inflated incredibly under Mr. Mathias, and I think they need to be brought back down to normal, or at least a study done, requested by the council of what is comparable and whether we are perhaps overpaying our staff.
Okay. Chuck?
So if I could speak on the other side of that, having gone through this budget ad nauseum, my wife tried to get me therapy on this. I think you're missing some revenues. I think the revenues are underestimated in some cases, and I believe that the city is overlooking revenues that it could get. For example, one of our community association members did an analysis, a very thorough not me, but one of the other ones did a very thorough analysis on the amount of tickets written in a day in the city of Des Moines. Appallingly low. 1 ticket per day. Now, if someone had asked me, per shift, that's right. If someone had asked me, how many tickets you think are written in Des Moines in a day, I'd say, probably a dozen, maybe 15. 1. Now, I also would wonder how many of those infractions are actually monetized by the courts, and that money's coming back to the city. When you look at the budget, you dig into the details, it seems low. Of course, with 1 ticket being written a day, I can understand why it's written, why it's low. But things like that. I'll give you another example. The Speed Enforcement Fund. It says it's projecting a revenue of $381,000 of revenue in 2024. That's a 4% increase over the prior year. There's no mention of the speed cameras in Redondo. Now, I did a very quick analysis of the speed cameras in Redondo, and I looked at the actual agreements, so I factored in all the details, cut it in half, half goes to the state and half goes to the city. I was looking at $500,000, $600,000 just for the speed cameras in Redondo, if they are actually monetized and collected. I don't know. There's no way of knowing, but Redondo's not even mentioned in this. In the 2024 budget.
Do they itemize out when that budget was created, we didn't know when the speed cameras were gonna.
That's true.
Redondo.
Yeah.
So,
But you could certainly have done an amendment and at least reflect some $400,000, I was told a long time ago, again, this is, just conversation, that the cameras, red light cameras that you've already got installed were making $1 million a year.
So did they itemize out the speed cameras on that sheet? I can't
No,
remember.
it just says Speed Enforcement Fund.
So, I think the increase probably has to do with the Redondo, so that's.
4% of $300,000? That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's pocket change.
So, good eye, Chuck.
I mean, but there are examples in here where I think you've underestimated the revenue side, which I can understand why. I mean,
Better be conservative than not.
better to be conservative, and as we all know, accountants usually are very conservative, but sometimes to a fault. They need to be a little more realistic, but I couldn't agree more about the salaries. There's some, if you look at the percentages of increases between years, big picture numbers, 30–40% increases in salaries from one year to the next.
In individual salaries?
You look at the totals.
The total amount.
Yeah, big picture, totals amount. From one year to the next, 30–40% over the last 3 years.
So I think it would be, okay.
And let me just add one thing. What you're asking us to do is great, but in order to do it, you would have to fine comb this budget to the nth degree to dig through those questions that I already pulled out a year ago when the draft first came out. So it would take, you can't expect anyone to sit here and adjust the pie chart without knowing the details. I mean, everyone that's asked questions here, they're detailed questions that you have to dig into this to actually answer whether it's feasible or not. So while I agree it's something we should be challenged with, it's a lengthy process.
May I
I
speak
think-
for a second
Go ahead.
here, Harry?
Mhm.
So I want to appreciate the desire to come and say, we wanted, this was asked to do this. So to your point, Chuck, you can't ask these people to dig into a budget the way that you have.
Completely agree with that.
So, and it's not something even that you would ask a council member to do, quite to that length, right? That's why we have staff, and these are part-time jobs, and a lot of us have full-time jobs elsewhere. So when we get elected, we say, we want you all to go back and here's our budget, come back and give us your recommendations. But it's not our job as policymakers to dig in the weeds. And we need to have, we've got 170 some odd staff. We need that staff to be our experts and come back to us and say, this is what we did. You said that this was your vision and goal, and we're coming back to you and saying, we're running after that. And so, this is our effort to try and pull out of citizens their priorities. We're not trying to ask people to dig through the budget and find things. Now, this would be a really good private conversation, also with the ability for our experts in our finance department to be able to answer for some of those interesting things that you found. And so, but what we're trying to do here is trying to ask citizens, here's how we spend our money. Do you have different priorities for a city, for the policy of our city? Because do you see how we can't ask you all to do this and then come back to the table with some of the statistics that you did, and which is amazing that you would take a deep dive like that.
But if you look at the pie chart, based upon what's already been said, what I'm hearing is that slice of the pie that's the city manager that has those high-level salaries in it, you think that should be smaller. That's what we're asking you to do. And that's not necessarily having to dig into that too deeply, but that you'd like to see a smaller percentage spent on high-level staff. Am I correct? Charlene?
I'm just remembering one of our original meetings last year when all of our communities had a desire to have walkability in our town, so have sidewalks, and also have the potholes repaired. So where does that fall in this pie chart?
Is Public Works, it's Plan, Building, and PW Administration. It's 2.7% of our budget.
Oh, well, that's Public Works Administration.
Oh, that's just administration?
Jack that up and take it from the city manager?
Mhm.
And did I
I
hear
think
that,
Public Works comes from
read somewhere recently that potholes were going to be addressed this summer?
I'm sorry, say that again,
I thought I heard that the potholes were going to be repaired this summer.
That's an ongoing
Or not true?
that's an ongoing
argument.
thing that, potholes are going to be, some potholes are gonna be repaired. Everything in the city, no, that's not gonna happen this summer, because road maintenance is what that truly is an ongoing process always. And it's just a question of, okay, how much is there in the budget to attack that problem? So how many miles of road can get done in order to regrade and fix the potholes?
Well, there's one in particular at 222nd and Greenview
Oh,
Fix-It form,
mm-hmm.
Fix-It form.
There's a form for that. Yeah, it's online. It's called a Fix-It form. Yeah, we have a Fix-It form. If you see a problem,
Yeah.
go onto the website and, search for Fix-It form. Yes. And, get it in the queue.
Again, I just want to remind us
Mhm.
of those ideas that were so common in every community, the walkability of
Mhm.
our town. So when can we envision that ever happening?
Go ahead.
Okay, so all of this, there are lots of miscellaneous sections of town that, for example, don't have sidewalks, don't have curbs. If you've got a section of town that you would like to be put on, that we have a huge document, I think it's got 100 projects on it. It's called the Transportation Improvement Plan. And so anytime there's like the whole section of Kent Des Moines Road all the way up from down here to Pack Highway is on that plan in either altogether or in sections. It's just when we can get the funding for it. And we're always looking for funding. We right now are doing the whole thing on 24th is a cool thing called Safe Routes to School. And that's all grant funding. Anytime that we're able to get grant funding for a project on that list, it's a prioritized list. That project gets to move up to like the top 10. The top 10 are usually-ish the active projects. But almost every, main street that really should have a sidewalk is on that plan right now. It's sitting there waiting for funding.
And does it work from the center of town out?
No, there's different factors. It has to do with safety. For example, center of town out 24th, we prioritize that because it's schools, right? We were able to get the funding for that. If we do well with that, spend our money, get that project done, we can do other Safe Routes to School projects. We did one up on, they're working on it, the one up on 200th between Des Moines Memorial Drive and North Hill, right? We got some grant funding to put sidewalks and gutter, and that's a Safe Routes to School. So and then at the very top of our transportation improvement plan is an ongoing, always, what is it, road improvement, it's called something, if you look it up, the very top is just constant, asphalt road repair, fix it, like that's the top all the time. Oh, and, the ADA one.
Street maintenance fund.
Always looking for safety things on, like, what means shaving sidewalks or something like that. So those are always ongoing. Anytime we get money,
And there's staff
There.
specific to that grant writing?
yes, we actually even have somebody that we've contracted every once in a while. If there's a lot of really great grants out there, certain specific ones where we got a project that we would love to, it's on our plan, we want to get going on it, we'll even get help. But we've got some really great grant writers on staff as well. But yes.
And I just kind of point
Go.
you to, there are separate they're under special revenue funds, page 75, page 81 and 85. There's the street maintenance fund and the street pavement fund.
7581, you were correct on the first time.
75 and 81. And those are not part of the general fund. So they are fund sources that are the revenues are coming in through a different source. And then that goes out, and that's how we get the roads paved. And then prioritizing, as Tracy suggested, is where can we get the grant funding? Because if we can get it for that, and we think that that's something to, that should move up because it's schools and kids, then that's part of how it gets moved up. Okay, Gene has had his placard up for a long time, so let me get to him.
I'm just wondering, we're at a very opportune time right now, and the council is in the process of hiring a new city manager. And as you all know, the way the city manager's form of government works is that we hire the person, and basically then sign off to them. It's your responsibility to, manage the city, and we are legally prohibited from interfering, other than what I call the nuclear option is if the person finally ticks us off so much, we just say, pull the plug. So anyway, but this is a golden opportunity for us to be addressing some of these issues, to Chuck's comment about, and Dave's comment about salaries. The best and easiest time to make those adjustments is when you've got somebody new coming in. You're not having to go through the internal politics of whacking somebody's salary, and is it fair to have done this or anything else. So we're at this very opportune time. At the same time, correct me if I'm wrong, we're in the process of hiring a lot of new department heads, and there is no direction from, the person who's going to have to be administering this. It's going to be like, okay, we've burdened you with this high salary. So I'm wondering what is our leeway as far as saying, put a moratorium on the hiring until we do have a new city manager in place, and that some of these decisions can be made, and the priorities then, it's great that we're setting priorities. I don't know that it makes any sense for us to be getting down into the weeds, although getting into the weeds can give you good examples of where things need to change. But as far as actually setting the priorities, I believe we used to have, when I say we, the councils, used to have priority setting retreats. I believe they took place on Saturdays, and we would sit down and just say, and these could be open to the public or anything, come in and tell us what you think the priorities are, and then we deliver the priorities to the new city manager, who's been given some leeway here on how to make this thing work. But if we tie the city manager's hands coming in by having hired, and it's basically what the previous administration said our values are, then that's not quite fair. I yield.
Okay. David?
On the topic of salaries, with the city council setting priorities, besides saying we want to make police more of a priority and parks less of a priority, could you say we want to make salaries consistent with regional norms as a priority?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that is a place to start. The other example that is the reason I'm bringing this up is, again, I was sitting in the back row at a city council meeting, and you've got the hired gun to help recruit the next city manager, and the discussion was what salary range, and a salary range was suggested from the dais, and quite frankly, if you read between the lines, he was saying that's really more than you need to be offering, unless there's a salary compression issue with other city employees. And the answer was, there's a problem with salary compression for the other city employees, which tells you there's a problem with the salaries. And I don't know if it's just at the top, so this is not the city council getting in the weeds saying, what are everybody's salaries and are they comparable to regional norms? You can tell whoever you need to tell that works for the city, think it needs to be a priority because there seems to be a problem that a study is conducted to see how out of whack salaries are, and to start working towards getting those corrected, and not micromanaging who gets a raise and who gets a cut, but rather put it on the city employees to get this ship corrected. I think you had raised yours.
I knew you had something really relevant. Well, I just wanted to say, I ran into my son on the way here, and I told him what we were going to be talking about today, and he's like, wow, those are big topics. And I was like, they sure are. They're really using us, and as they should, and I really appreciate that. I'm familiar with a process called participatory budgeting, which is something we might want to look into at some point, where the community, there's a process for getting the community's input on a budget. When the mayor spoke, it really kind of struck a chord with me a little bit, because, you know, many times on a citizen committee like this, we would be learning about the budget. Like, this would be our opportunity to be, look how the city does their budgeting. But some of us know a lot more about budgeting than others, you know. And so the things that you brought up were, wow, those are amazing things. Sometimes you would have even a funding committee, subcommittee of the citizen committee. So it does feel like I don't feel adequately prepared to analyze this simple little table and tell you where I think you should make cuts and where we should change it, or, you know, I don't have enough information, honestly, to do that.
Yeah, I think that you're not we're not asking you to tell us where to make
Right.
cuts. We're asking you to tell us,
Yeah.
you know, we spend this much of our budget on police and fire or on something else, and I think it should be this much on something else and this much on police and fire. That's something, you know, and that's the value statement
Yeah.
that we're asking you to make.
Yeah, the value, so like a visioning and a value exercise, I could do that.
Mhm.
But I don't feel prepared to make comments on this. But if
Okay.
you want to go,
Trying to look.
I think you're next.
I was going to go back to Bernice because she's had hers up for quite a while. And,
Going back to
Mhm.
sidewalks and potholes and all of that, Mayor Tracy, you said we're always trying to find money. So that tells me that the 4.1% is not enough money, because we're continually depending on grants to fix our streets and make our sidewalks. So for me, I would say increase the amount, if that's the case, that we're always trying to find the money to maintain streets and roads and sidewalks. So that would be where I would say increase that amount, because we shouldn't have to be running and trying to get people to help us do it. Or how is that 4.1, if I'm looking at the right amount?
Oh, let's see. That's public safety contract services? That's different, no.
Yeah.
I think that I'm looking up their, first, Bernice, I do want to say, we do have money to be working streets all the time. That's our TBD money, Transportation Benefit District money that you guys pay
That's
on your
not
car
part of the
tax.
general
It's
fund.
not part of the
It's a
general
special
fund.
fund.
It's a special fund. It has to be spent on roads. So we do have that funding every year. That it's not enough to give everybody sidewalks and gutters, and, you know, it's more than $1 million a mile. But there's projects roads that have been paved, quite a few roads that have been paved just in the last handful of years. But we're still working that.
Okay, that's good. I was just listening to it, and it sounded to me like we
Fund
don't
is-
have enough money for this basic need for the city.
No,
So my mind would say, then that's the place to start. Let's take care of the city. So that was where my mind
Okay.
went at. And I was looking at the building and parks maintenance, that's the red slide, and then the parks and recreation and senior services. I was questioning, and maybe it's because I don't know enough about it, why wouldn't the parks and recreation be also with the parks maintenance? Perhaps if you couple it with that, and I'm looking at the senior services, maybe you can somehow, if you put the parks and recreation along with the parks maintenance and building, make that one section, and somehow trim off a little bit of each of them, rather than having a whole section for parks and recreation, seniors, and then buildings and parks and maintenance. But like everybody else, I don't know enough about it, so I'm looking at these colors and trying to figure out how can we help our city.
Well, some of this is, excuse me, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, some of this is changes that have been made by past administrations. For example, parks maintenance used to be under the Parks Department. It's now been separated into, you know, a different entity. So, you know, over the years, we've heard, you know, lectures about silos. Well, really, all that happened was the silos were changed, just shifted. But there are still silos, and so, yeah, that's why some of the groupings in here are the result of budgetary decisions as to where to shift the silo. Doesn't mean it can't be shifted back, and this is, face it, folks, I mean, we're looking now where we're having we put on the ballot a levy lid lift, which is indicating that we've got to raise some more money and stuff, and so we're asking a new city manager to come in, and it's not the most ideal of situations. I mean, having to come in and make some reorderings of what we're doing just to try and keep us solvent. So it's going to be a particular burden for the new city manager. And I guess what I'm looking at is giving that person, as much leeway as we possibly can, because there's going to be some tough decisions. But at the same time, the public's got to be able to weigh in and say, okay, yeah, don't go there. Mm-hmm. So it's a real balancing act. But I think what we need is some flexibility here. Kirsten.
So, Harry, I think where you're going with this, if I may say, so when I look at this as not a budget person, but as a tenant, marina tenant, a pretend resident of Des Moines, I see a city whose priorities are safety of people, and then you've got, the mandatory big salaries in there, and then your next priorities are Parks and Rec, senior services, parks, buildings, things like that. Now, to me, that's the kind of place I would like to live in. So I think this, to me, says that, and I'm good with this. Is that what you were trying to get to?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, what I'm trying to get to is, what do you want to tell me?
Yeah.
And the whole point of this exercise is to, hear back from everybody. So, Magdalena?
I do have experience with budgets, managing health centers of, several millions of dollars. And I wanted to also share for historical knowledge. I was here last year, as many of us were here, and we did have the opportunity to look at the budget, but it was already finalized, if you remembered. I asked that question, how is our input going to be used? And they said, well, thanks for your input, but it's done, pretty much, right? So I think there's an opportunity here this is a good exercise that we're doing, but it almost feels like it's just to check a box, I'm sorry, versus input that is going to be used in a meaningful way. So I think there's an opportunity for future years to have a meaningful conversation before or as is being developed, so that is reflected here. I agree with you, and I really appreciate your big picture, of how the buckets are allocated. And I also feel really bad as a former business director. I feel really bad for the future mayor having to inherit people that were hired for him or for her, perhaps with the wrong set of values because they were attracted by money. Because if the salaries are really inflated, then it's gonna perhaps, I'm not saying it will happen, will attract the wrong, for the wrong reasons, not for the values or because they want to be part of this community. And I think it's a huge problem. I don't have a solution. I had some experience with that, but not in the 40% that you're mentioning. So I think there's an opportunity to invest in some consultation and see how that can be fixed, because if you fix the city mayor, but then you don't the current employees, and you have that compression issue. So when is this cycle gonna stop, right? So there is an opportunity there, I think, and also on the perhaps not lost, but what are the opportunities there for revenue that we're not seeing? But I think overall big picture, I agree with you that it looks good. The buckets are good. The right, not knowing the specificity of what's inside each bucket.
Terry?
I have a question and then a comment. So in regards to administration, whether it's with the city manager, the courts, Are the salaries comparable? Are you guys looking at salaries for staff and making it so that it's comparable to other cities, other counties? So that's my question, and then I'll make my comment.
That is what we would expect from the city manager in hiring.
But that may or may not have been what was happening.
Well, you know, I know that we just hired a new court clerk, and I know that the process that was involved there was going to AWC, Association of Washington Cities, and the salaries are all listed there, and at least as I understood it, it's a very comparable salary.
Okay, and then my
But-
comment, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, part of that is the size of the entity is not the size of every other entity, and so there's never quite a complete one-to-one.
Right.
But, you know, that's part of what the city manager is supposed to be doing.
Okay. And in regards to what Jean was talking about with the open positions and should we hold off, since these are, you know, higher up level positions that are open, waiting to fill those till the city manager is on board. I mean, that's what the county does all the time, is if someone is gone, had been in a position for a really long time, or is getting paid this high salary, they brought their replacements in at a lower rate of pay because they're bringing in usually a lower rate of experience. And then, you know, there's these ranges that help with the compression problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are going to fill these positions that have been getting paid this higher rate before this city manager comes in, I mean, you've already set your expectations and there's not much we can do about it. So it is something that may be something to look at before you fill those positions, because I don't see why you couldn't reallocate what the pays are, because if those, I mean, I don't know what the situation was, why those positions are empty, but if they're people that have been here for 30 years and they're retired, it's a whole different level of people that you're going to be bringing in.
Yeah, and, I mean, my understanding is that every position does have a leveling and a range within that. So, you know, there's a hierarchy to it, as well as a range within each hierarchy. And, you know, ultimately that's something that the city manager needs to decide, are those appropriate? So, and is this directly on point?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, it's part of the conversation,
Another
so.
opportunity
Mhm.
for leveling that out is the understanding that there are steps in each range. So the ranges go across, the ranges are, you know, 51, 52, 53, 54, like that. And each range number 54 has 5 steps. But if you get to the 5th step and you're still at your same range, that's it. What you get then after that is a COLA. So that's one way of evening it out over time, right? Sometimes when you're a super upper management, you end up with, you know, different creative, like severance packages and things like that. And that's where there can be some real negotiation and wiggle room for our upper management. But, so these are all really good pieces of input, but that, through attrition and people just moving through the organization, which does happen in a city this size, right? You even notice it at Chase Bank or Wells Fargo, right? They're coming through to get the experience to go on to a bigger bank. You know, your holding time probably for your average employee, unless you're really up there, is a good, you know, 5 to 7 years unless they can keep moving up in the organization. But we're a mid-sized city, right? So we're not huge. And we also don't have the capability of like having a transition of, you know, 20% of our directorial staff and then leaving those open for a long time. You know, we're too small to do that. We really need to, we can maybe hold open our city manager right now while we're recruiting, and maybe another position, but you can't do that with 4 of them. And so there's, but I think that some of these ideas, it's not talked about openly from the dais all the time, but people who are right now responsible for bringing people in, they know there's a tension there. They have felt the tension. There's a budget tension. So, and it's been talked, we've talked, I've talked, I know all of us have talked. So I'm hoping to see a little bit of an evening out of that. But that is the place right there where once you max out, then you're done. You're down to a COLA. So, if that helps.
Victoria?
Before I make my point, I just want to thank you for going beyond the 4 meetings a year. This is so valuable to us, and I hope to you, that you can see how sincerely we do want to learn and we do want to step up and provide substantive advice as an advisory body. That said, I love what you said that I didn't know about, which is a more collaborative, public-private discussion about budget. And I don't know when the timing might be right for that, before a new city manager or maybe after a new city manager, so they get to hear from us and have an open forum about budget before it's finalized. And the other suggestion I would have is, and this is not for you because you don't chair that finance committee, but I would hope that Matt Mahoney would decide that it's appropriate to put someone from the public on that committee, someone who can kind of be that voice, somebody who knows what they're talking about, for example. I know it was talked about and sort of tabled, but given how strongly we all feel about what's happening to us as a city, I think that would be a wonderful show of confidence in the transparency of the budget process to include someone from the public on that committee.
And just so you're aware, because you talked a little bit about when is the right time, there is a timing to the budget. Yeah. It has to be completed at a. And I think it's August, isn't it? Well, no, it's not even that. The budget actually has to be finalized in November, I believe it is, and then you work backwards from there. Yeah. And which means now is the time to get the input into the budget. You know, as Jeff, who's our finance director, is, you know, presumably he'll get a copy of this. It'll go to the finance committee as well, and there's interaction there. You know, so there is a timing element to all of this, and part of, you know, what we heard by setting your topics here is that you wanted to get into this a lot earlier, so that it wasn't just a, gee, thanks for your input, but this is already final. We're trying to work this earlier into the process to do that, but you know, but there's always going to be a certain amount of procedure that drives when something happens, and you know, the idea of waiting until the city manager is here. He's not going to write this year's budget under any circumstances. He'll get in at, you know, even if we get him hired by the beginning of September, he will come in, you know, mid-document, and document, you know, priorities are set before the document. And then you can imagine what that learning curve is going to be like, because that's not the only thing he's supposed to be doing once he or she, I'm doing it too. Sorry about that. You know, once they take the job. So that's just, and I'm not saying that to dissuade anybody from sharing. I want you to share. I want you to tell us how we're feeling. But there are other drivers involved, and one of those is process, because we do have statutory things that we need to do. Bernice?
Yes. How many open positions do we have right now that we need to hire people to fill?
I don't know the answer to that. I think there are, what, 2 or 3 director level?
Well, I know that I think we just hired, our IT person?
Yes, we just hired the IT person.
Just hired our IT person, just hired our public works person. We are
I didn't know that.
out recruiting right now for community development person. We're hoping for a multiply gifted person that has some economic development expertise there, but that's out there. What's the other one? Of course, we just rearranged with our communications.
Mm-hmm.
And so that created some rearranging in events and facilities. And I don't know of.
I only see it as high level on your website right now. It's just Director of Community Development as being
Okay.
advertised currently,
Okay.
high level.
But how many openings are there total?
Oh,
Can
well,
you even-
you got police in here, so.
Yeah, well, that's a relevant one too.
Always
That's
police and
advisory,
there's
so-
always
Mhm.
parks and events, so.
So my
Go ahead.
question, I asked that because I wanted you to know, would the city manager have anything to do with the hiring normally of these positions that are going to be filled?
Oh, absolutely.
And if he or she would normally have something to do with it, is there any reason why you could not wait until that manager is hired and in place? Because as I see it, that person is at a great disadvantage if all of these new hires have come in. He is expected to work with these people and their income is just so high. There's nothing he can do about it. If he does try to rein it in, then he's the bad guy. And I guess what I'm thinking is we don't want to get a new city manager and they hang around for 6 months and say, this is for the birds. No one can do this. So we need to set things up that this person can be successful. And maybe with the hiring might be something you can put on hold and let this person come in and be an active part of the hiring of these different positions.
Go ahead,
Gene?
Or, sorry, you are the chair.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a very good point. And the thing is, we're now on biennial budgeting. So basically what we're doing is we're looking at a budget that the new city manager is not going to have any kind of meaningful input into what he's gonna have to administer for 2 years. Yes, we can do budget correction and all of that, but the basic set of values and that we set by policies that we set in establishing a budget, the new city manager's not going to be able to have any input or any kind of suggestion as to what we should do. It makes sense to me, and you know, you're the advisory committee, so you know, I'm just throwing this out here. If you can shoot arrows at it if you want, is that we should be, the council should be having a discussion now about, you know, what our priorities are, where we think we should be going with this new budget. So the interim city manager and his staff can be reflecting that in the new biennial budget. And it means that, you know, this is a discussion that should have started 2 months ago. But every day that we delay from now on is we're behind the 8 ball. And so, you know, I think that's a discussion that we should prioritize.
Okay. Chuck?
Makes sense. I think council should put a hiring freeze immediately on the city and stop this moving around departments immediately until this new city manager gets in. It's just gonna frustrate the person to death. And to me, you're poisoning the well, okay? And the water's not gonna taste real good when the new city manager gets there, so I totally agree with you. I have one question. Has the 2023 books been closed yet? For you business owners?
I don't think so.
2023?
Ours just closed. We just got the
To
report
me,
like
that's,
yesterday.
to me, where the budget is today, with the deficits that we're looking at in 2025, that's intolerable. To me, sorry, it's my opinion.
Bernice? Your placard's up. Oh, that's okay. Okay, so, I'm sorry, Mary Ellen.
Jenny, could I ask you what the salary range is of the director job you referenced that we're currently recruiting for?
The Director of Community Development salary range is 153,645 to 186,769.
Do you know if any comparables were done with other cities of the?
Oh, I don't know anything.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That seems to me to be kind of a logical thing to do, is to see how this salary fits with other small towns in the area, or middle-sized town, I'm sorry. I'm proud to be from a small town here, though. So anyway, that makes the most sense, and I'm wondering if that is a mission-critical position, if it could be filled on a temporary basis, giving the new city manager the opportunity to fill that position permanently with his or her choice. And acting, yeah.
Yes.
Really? Okay, one thing though, we are not in a position as a mid-sized city to be able, like I said, to just hold some of this stuff open. Some of you who attend council meetings know that we're in the middle of a deadline comp plan review process. That is a huge lift, and every single month they come with this huge packet for us to read and give feedback on. They're working their backsides off to try and get through that. And that's not normal work, right? That's just a once in 5 year thing that they have to produce for the state, well, to the county, and review for, agencies review that. That's huge, let alone just trying to get their stuff done. We just lost a key person to retirement that knew that just the institutional knowledge. We need somebody to come aboard, even if it's just 2 hands and 10 fingers that can type. I mean, so, but it would be really great if we found somebody from King County that was already involved in this process in their own city and knew exactly where we were headed, and is under the exact same kind of pressure to produce more housing, more middle housing, more affordable housing. Somebody that would come aboard and can just get right in, understands PSRC, understands King County. We just can't just let that go. Plus, if we did that, if we had let these positions go, just on hold for a while, just contract them. You got your IT, Public Works, Community Development, and Comms, and you're just on hold. And what if we don't get a city manager until October, and then there's onboarding, and pretty soon you're into next March before you get some of this stuff if you go out to recruit. And I understand the paradigm of letting this new city manager pick, but he also wants to be able to climb aboard a tractor that runs. And it's also not fair to ask somebody to just onboard and get used to your whole city and everything, but they're missing major pieces to their car. And so these are not positions where somebody's going to come in and not know anything. These are going to be valuable, critical people that have a wealth of knowledge in them already, or we wouldn't be hiring them. So you can't ask us to just lose these key pieces during a critical year. We've got our EIS thing going with the landmark. We've got all the stuff that we're trying to keep having, and then these comp plan things. So just saying, it's a lot of pressure, and Tim didn't sign up for this. He's doing a fantastic job. I think we just need to feel like we're going out into the country, asking people to come here, and we don't want to present them with a broken down car. We want some great professionals working here. And if we didn't have any turnover at all, they would be presented with even higher salaried people that have already been here for a long time. I mean, hopefully you always present a full staff to somebody coming in. So, one way or the other, a new city manager is going to have challenges. This is going to be his. He's going to have new directors, but or hers. Yeah, thank you. Anyway, I feel like we gotta keep the machine moving forward. And we have too much work to do for the amount of staff we have already. So, that's my
Okay,
take.
Bernice, and this has got to be the last comment.
I'll keep it very short. It made me forget what I was gonna say. That thought left me, but I did have a question, different subject when we get to wrap it up. I want to know what has happened with the information we shared a few months ago about the things that our neighborhood wants. I want to know, has any of that been considered? Is any of that been addressed? I haven't seen it in my neighborhood. Hopefully somebody is experiencing some change. But if we can maybe talk about that next time, what has happened with all of that valuable information that we shared from our neighborhood?
That's a very good segue into our next topic, next meeting. And we have 15 minutes to figure it out. So, do we want to meet in June? People keep wanting to do this on a monthly basis. Do we want to do that? Is that a consensus? Yes? I don't see any negatives, so. All right, we do have some scheduling issues in June. Since Jenny will not be available on what would normally be, what, the third week?
Fourth, I
The
think
fourth?
we've been doing the fourth Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the 26th. I am out of town that whole week.
Okay.
And so, let's look at the third I mean, Wednesdays seem to be working well for most people.
Third Wednesday is Juneteenth.
Yeah, that's not, yeah, can't do it on the 19th. That's a holiday. Is there another Wednesday in June?
The 12th? Yeah.
Well, can't be a Thursday because the council will be here. Yeah.
So if we did it the 12th, that would be 1, 2, 3 weeks from now.
leaving town on the day before the 4th of July? We could move it till July 2nd.
Just do a July meeting, kind of June-July meeting together on the 3rd. Do you guys do fireworks celebrations on the 3rd? I know some cities do.
Not on the 3rd, no.
Not on the 3rd,
We do
okay.
drones on the 4th.
Okay. Okay.
Drones.
Drones on the 4th.
Drones now.
Yes. Would July the 3rd work for everybody?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry
Okay,
to be
July the
complicated.
3rd, from 6 to 8? All right.
Excellent.
And then, what do we, so we
Could
want,
we, in addition to Bernice's wonderful
Follow-up?
suggestion, could we circle back on this discussion about what is happening with the budget, or what is happening with what we gave you in terms of feedback? Because I think you took it seriously. We're all saying the same things out here.
okay,
What do you think?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, budget priorities, so follow up by neighborhood priorities, budget priorities, and probably those are
So I did,
hand in hand.
I did hear, other questions. Is there other resources that you guys would like before you come back to that discussion?
I can send out, because we have new members, I can send out the priorities discussion that took place, the feedback that you all brought forward
Mhm.
last year, so that you can see what the neighborhoods were. We did a
Yeah.
neighborhood, and then we did by city as well, so I can send those documents out to everybody.
Charlene?
Could we learn about current events in our city, for example, and not events per se, but projects such as the Masonic Home, what the status of that property is, and what that kind of development looks like in the future, where that is,
We'd all like to know the answer to that question, trust me. Yes.
where is it at now? I mean, this could be for
Mhm.
next month.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, that's what people
Good
ask me,
question.
what's going on at the
Good
Masonic
question.
Home?
mm-hmm,
What's going on 24th?
mm-hmm.
Some of these questions I can answer immediately, but.
So 24th up by Kent Des Moines Road?
That was just an
That,
example.
yeah, because that road's just, mm-hmm,
Terrible. But the Masonic Home property is a current always of interest to others.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the parking lot, I understand, is up and running and we're paying for parking again?
Not yet.
Oh, I just saw the sign.
It will,
The signs are there, but we're not really.
June 3rd. The gates, the, yeah, the gates go up and down, you take a ticket, but it doesn't cost you to get out. It's basically a dry run to work out the kinks, and to get people acclimated to it.
That would also be a good time.
When those become available.
You can get
You
one
can get them
now.
now. Mm-hmm. Marina office, Harbor Master's office.
Right next door to,
Yeah,
Quarter
the
deck.
quarter deck.
then stop
Uh-huh.
at the quarter deck.
Yeah, and stop at the quarter deck and get at minimum a cup of coffee, but, you know, if you want a pastry or a glass of wine, that's okay too.
So then that revenue goes to the marina as well as the revenue from the parking? Or is the parking?
The revenue from the parking pass? Yes.
It'd also be a good time to have an initial report on the Redondo speed cameras will be in effect as of the
Great
27th of
Mm-hmm.
May, so we should be able to get a report back on, okay, what's it doing?
Okay.
Lots of, it's like, you guys, it sounds like too, it's good opportunity for input, but you would like a briefing on topics, like a briefing meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we also want to be of assistance to you.
Absolutely.
Both.
Absolutely.
Maybe just the current state, what's happening 5 10 minutes.
In fact, I don't think that's long enough.
Well, it is one thing that the city manager's reports used to be quarterly reports in addition to the weekly reports. And the quarterly reports were, you know,
Little more
a compilation of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, exactly where we're at on major issues rather than, you know, week to week.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Mm-hmm. We'll see what we can do and do that. So, you know, this is really, this is a great discussion. And, you know, I hope you're feeling like this is, you know, coming to us. We're not trying to just tell you what it is. You know, we got lots of notes. We've got, I want to make sure that is happening here because, you know, it's not just us to tell you some stuff. We want to know what you're doing. And, you know, we do feel that this is a feedback loop, but we also want you to make sure you're talking to people in your neighborhoods and, you know, you're representing what they're saying to you, even if it's not what you think. But, you know, you may not agree, but I've heard this 2 or 3 times, and I want to bring it to your attention because, you know, that's great. So I appreciate that.
Mary Ellen,
Yeah.
I whispered to Victoria, I just ignore the ones I disagree with.
Oh, well, there you go. Uh-huh. So, all right. Well, oh, Doug.
I would like to ask a question after this meeting is closed.
Oh.
Okay. Well, I'll take that as a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? And I see a second. And the meeting is adjourned and seconded, and I guess we're all in favor. There's a consensus. All right. Cut off the recording.